Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Just to mention a little bit about Datastax before we get into the conversation. We at Datastax support real-time data applications with an open data stack that just works. Our technology is fundamentally built of two different components, which are both based on very prominent open source software projects under the Apache Foundation. The first is Cassandra, the very popular NoSQL database, and Pulsar, which is the leading standard for streaming and messaging, both run under the Apache Foundation. A good example of an organization whose business thrives on real-time data is Endowers in Singapore, a fast-growing fintech company. Today, I'm very pleased to have in this panel with me Deepak Sarda. Deepak is the Vice President Engineering at Endowers. And as I said, we are privileged to have him as a part of the panel. So Deepak, could you please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about what Endowers does? So over to you.
Thanks, Deb. So wonderful to be here with you. We always have fun chatting, so it's great to get this chat, just a casual chat, but now, maybe for the benefit of everyone about how Endowers actually thinks about real-time data. No better person to have that chat with than you. Endowers itself, so we are a Singapore-based digital investment and wealth management platform. And we are really designed to make it easy for anyone to invest their money with confidence. So what we do is we basically provide a fully digital experience. So you can go to our website or download our app and create an account all online. Then you set your financial goals, you set your risk appetite. Then we create and maintain a very well-diversified investment portfolio that's designed specifically for you, that individual, right? You can use your cash or you can use your public pension money. So in Singapore context, that's your CPF and SRS, and use those to fund your investments. And we'll kind of, manage that investment over time for you. In fact, we are the first fintech in Singapore to offer this full flexibility where you can bring your CPF SRS, but also your cash and give you like a holistic way of investing and managing all your money. Since our launch in 2019, we've been growing very, very rapidly. We have 3x our customer base, and we are now managing more than 1.5 billion in customer assets. So that's the level of trust that customers have placed in us. This has all been in Singapore, and later this year, we are looking forward to our first international expansion in Hong Kong. So that's coming up. So that's a bit about Endowers.
Okay, so nicely put, Deepak. So Endowers, as we understand it, is simplifying investment for its customers and giving them the investment confidence by offering financial products that are rightly positioned based on their stage in life. And you're also pairing them with low-cost access to best-in-class financial products, correct? Now, these features obviously need access to real-time data and insights. And that was my first point, right? So you agree with that. Can you be a little more specific on how Datastax's Astra platform supports Endowers with these deliverables?
Yeah, great question. So I'll peel back the onion layers a little bit, right? So Datastax Astra, and then before that is Cassandra, which you mentioned is like the primary open source technology underpinning Astra, which we heavily leverage. And I want to talk about the business context which drives that leverage and drives that need for Cassandra and Astra, right? And so the business context is, I mentioned it's personalized financial advice at low cost. So what we do is essentially give our customers an ability to, personalize their investment, and we take a goal-based approach to investment. So individuals, as you know, have different life goals. Someone wants to buy a car, someone wants to pay for their kids' college, or fund their retirement, and so on and so forth. So people are not investing in a vacuum, right? Like they have real goals and they want to realize those goals. And so from an investment perspective, it's not so much about I need like X% of return. It's more about, can I fulfill that life goal? And is my investment actually going to help me meet that life goal? So for us, when we think about financial advice that's personalized, we want to tailor it to that individual and make sure that we are maximizing the probability that that individual will meet that financial goal that they have set out for themselves. Now, that problem statement means that we have to build a very comprehensive understanding of that individual's financial situation, look at all the data points, look at their time horizon, their risk comfort level, everything, and synthesize all of that data in creating that personalized portfolio for them, right? So from that business context comes this need to be able to store large volumes of data, both at an individual level, but also at an aggregate level, right? When you think about risk and things like that. And having quick and flexible access to it. And then as we are scaling as a business, you layer on things like, we are a financial regulated entity. So things like security, compliance, availability, all of these start coming in. This is really where Cassandra has served us superbly well, right? So I mentioned since 2019, exponential growth, but Cassandra with its kind of virtually limitless storage scale, but paired with very, very predictable performance, extremely high resiliency, extremely high availability, and being the de facto standard in the space, broad availability, like we have a microservices architecture, so availability and access from all the languages and tools that we support, it's been phenomenal, right? So that's why Cassandra and Astra have been super, super valuable and fundamental to our needs as we grow, right? But that's actually like not even the interesting bit, because that's bread and butter. What really makes it interesting for us with Cassandra and Astra is when we, again, going back to that business context. So when we offer an investment portfolio, when we started with one product. We started with like a core wealth accumulation product. We call it our core flagship product. But over time, we started adding more product to support more variety of goals. Like I want to have a stable income in my retirement. That's my goal. Or I need to manage cash for a short-term duration. That's my goal. And we launched more sophisticated products to support this. But this is where Cassandra truly shines, because as we are launching these new products, the way we think about that data, the way we kind of think about, the individual's profile, etc., changes, right? And the last thing we want to do is do this whole thing where we are redesigning our base schemas, all of that kind of stuff to be able to build new products. And so Cassandra's support for semi-structured, unstructured data means that as a business capability grows, we don't have to remodel everything, right? We don't have to spend months doing like a data migration with all of that overhead just to launch a new business product. And so those two perspectives, having a very reliable, very scalable data store and support for semi-structured and unstructured data, these have been really, really useful in delivering our core mission, which is basically tailored financial advice for everyone.
It sounds great when it comes from a customer like you, as to the belief that you share with a belief of ours that Cassandra and Astra is a very reliable data store. That's great, but let's extend that a little bit more, because at Datastax we believe that is not enough, because with that we are just covering data at rest. What about changes in data, right? When there's a change in the data store, that information in real time needs to be transmitted through reliable connectors to other applications, your entire internal ecosystem. That could be a data warehouse, it could be a messaging system, it could be a downstream app, or it could be an AI ML engine. Does this paradigm apply to endowers in the way you're planning your application infrastructure?
Absolutely. And we have been like this from day one, right? Now, if you look at the broader financial industry, it's the entire industry has been responding to this whole move to real time, right? End of day batch processes, they are getting replaced by more and more real time systems. cash movements, like sending money to someone else, it used to take anywhere from 2 to 5 days, and now in many situations, many contexts, moving money is almost instantaneous, right? So that entire industry is moving. And personally, I spent almost a decade in equities trading infrastructure, so building trading systems, settlement systems, even that world. And that world actually has its origin almost 400 plus years ago, because like the first stock exchange, I think, was in Amsterdam around 1600, right? So that level of legacy is also moving to real time, where T+3 settlement comes down to T+2 settlement, and now increasingly we are looking at real-time settlement. The whole interest in blockchain is around how can we make settlement faster and things like that. So the entire industry is moving to be more real-time. That's kind of my bread and butter in financial services. But endowers specifically, I mean, we started 100% real-time on day one, because we are born in this generation, right? So we took advantage of that evolution in thinking, and we said, okay, we have to start with the assumption that everything is going to be real time, right? So our core stack is built to be real time. We use event sourcing principles, and we have domain events kind of flowing around in real time. And that's the core primitive of our data platform, right? A real time event, a domain event that's flowing. And these events feed everything. They feed everything from our client-side apps, our web app, or our mobile app. And they feed also our data warehouse and all of the integrations that we use with our partners to kind of move assets around, our money around, and things like that. One interesting thing of being born with a real-time system is that at the edge, we kind of convert occasionally from real time to batch, because some of the existing world is still batch. So we are in the opposite world, where we are real time at core, but do batch integrations at the edge. That's kind of besides the point. So yeah, we do all of this real time stuff. And we're using microservices, of course, to coordinate all of this. Now when it comes to the microservices we build and control, right? So building a real-time infrastructure is kind of easy, right? Because you are building everything from scratch. You are designing everything to event with event schemas and event principles, etc. All of that is easy, but you still have to build integrations, right? So at the edge with your partners or some legacy systems, etc. So you have to build these integrations, and every integration has like two layers to it. There's the business layer of what business functionality is achieving, but then it's also the other layer, which is kind of the same thing everywhere, which is authentication, making sure the event schemas are in sync between the two parties, failure handling and retries, building observability into that integration layer. So there's always these two layers for every single integration: the business layer and then the infrastructure layer of the integration, right? This is where the older people among us, I'm giving away my age, we reach for our enterprise integration patterns book and say, okay, what pattern do I implement over here, right? But this is kind of where if you don't have the organizational discipline, every integration pattern starts becoming very, very bespoke, right? So that authentication, retry, all of that, you end up building it slightly differently in every integration. And that becomes a complete nightmare from a security and governance perspective, right? You don't want to have that. What's much better, honestly, is if you have something like, for example, Astra's change data capture technology, because it takes away all of those concerns and standardizes them, right? And so you can focus just on the business layer and see what is this integration actually trying to achieve from the business layer, and make sure that you have the standard fabric, the standard plumbing to achieve real-time integrations with everyone else, and do it in a kind of a, meet all our needs around security and governance, etc. So I'm actually quite keen to understand from you, Deb, do you kind of share this perspective in terms of Astra CDC's value proposition, security and governance?
Yeah, actually, just a couple of days ago, we were having a similar conversation with a customer of ours regarding CDC. And there has been a lot of momentum on the CDC capability, not only for Astra, but also for people who are using our managed, self-managed footprint, which is called Datastax Enterprise, and even for the open source Cassandra version as well. So CDC is catching up in momentum very rapidly. See, Deepak, what is going to happen is that in the near-term use cases would be things like audit logging, detection and analysis of change anomalies, or a broader fraud detection use case could emerge. But what, in all these conversations that we are having, what I'm really excited about is the prospect of CDC feeding data into a downstream AI/ML engine, where the inbuilt algorithms of that engine will support the security and governance framework that the organization defines. That's really exciting for us, and we'll get there sooner rather than later. So that's my view of how it is, how CDC will play out specifically in the security and governance framework.
Right. Yeah, that's.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that sounds exciting, and yeah, can't wait for that and see how that helps us on our own AI/ML initiatives. Yeah.
Absolutely. But Deepak, I wanted to pick your brains on something else that you talked about: microservices and containers. And this is very holy for us in how we're building out our platform. How are you embracing these to create lightweight, secure, and scalable applications? What benefits is endowers specifically gaining from a business perspective by deploying containerization and microservices in your application build-outs?
Yeah. Well, just like with real time, we adopted microservices architecture pretty much from day one. So we've been 100% on microservices architecture. And I would say this has been a very key advantage to us as a business. Just to give you a sense of scale, today we have, I would say, about 40 plus business microservices across our backend, front end, as well as backend for front end, like middleware layer. And they are all running on containers orchestrated by Kubernetes, right? We use Scala and the Akka ecosystem, which has very strong support for building event source microservices. And it allows us to use principles of domain-driven design to kind of think about the domain boundaries of each service and use event sourcing principles as well. And so all of this container and microservices architecture has obviously helped our business needs in terms of maximizing uptime, achieving scalability, cost effectiveness in terms of deployment of our workflows. One example comes to mind. So, for example, our trading service, when we launched initially in the early days, we had just like a couple of instances of that trading service, like two containers, and that was enough. But as our business grew, we just kind of started spinning up, and it's now supporting, we 10x the number of containers, and nothing had to change, right? It's just kind of horizontal scalability at the container level. And so this has been really useful from a business perspective because we didn't have to re-architect all of that piece to support the business scale. I actually think that the microservices discussions and discourse kind of stops at this, which is, hey, all our containers are horizontally scalable and, life is good, right? But if you think about it, like you step back and say, okay, just scaling containers is not enough because that's just the compute layer, right? If you just scale containers and you're backed by a traditional database, which is just like, running in your typical active passive mode, etc., yes, you scale your containers 10x, but your database is still that single monolith sitting over there. And I'm sure every developer has figured out, okay, how do I increase the number of DB connections in my database pool, right? Like these kinds of discussions start coming in. And some of the junior developers discover, oh, this is why we have connection pools, right? So you actually need you actually need your data layer to scale just like your compute layer is scaling. And this is, again, going back to the benefits of Cassandra, where it's just designed for that horizontal scalability. And you can't just think microservices will solve everything. You have to think about your data layer itself. It has to be equally scalable, just like your compute layer. So that's why we love Cassandra. But what we really found great value there was we we actually adopted Datastax Astra, right? Which is kind of, your version of Cassandra, which you build and manage. Because now we have, okay, originally Cassandra's design is, okay, you can scale horizontally. All you need to add is throw in more compute, throw in more storage, and Cassandra scales. That's the design. But with Astra, I don't even have to do that, right? Datastax manages that for me. I just have to scale my container tier, and behind the scenes, Astra is scaling, keeping up with our scale on the compute side, and Astra is kind of completely managing the scaling and management of Cassandra itself. So I have scaled my compute tier, I have scaled my data tier, and funnily, and a very, very business valuable perspective is I've also scaled my DevOps layer, right? Because I don't actually need to spend as much energy in scaling and managing Cassandra, which is very, very important for a growing business like ours. I really want to keep my platform, my DevOps team, very, very lean, right? And that also is one reason why I'm also very excited by this whole serverless movement, because it's the same benefit I see. In serverless conversations, just like in container, it's all about horizontal scalability. In serverless conversations, I see a lot of discussion about usage-based pricing and all of that kind of stuff. That's, yes, important, meaningful, but from my perspective, again, what makes serverless such a great innovation is that I can completely outsource the operational concerns to another service provider. Right, and I know, Deb, you are cooking something in the serverless area, so I know I've already benefited from Astra by giving you the responsibility to scale my Cassandra. But I'm keen to hear what you're doing with serverless.
Yeah, I mean, serverless has really taken off. Yeah. Astra has taken off, but serverless has taken off like crazy. In fact, we grew this space 400% year over year. Because exactly the things, the benefits that you mentioned are big appeal factors for most organizations which are scaling their business, like endowers. So when we say serverless, Deepak, we mean simplicity to set up, simplicity to operate, simplicity in scaling up. So you don't provision for peak. You don't worry about your workloads going through peaks and troughs. We take care of that. The thing that users have to just think about is how many reads, how many writes, how much of storage is required, and how much of data transfer. That's it. Those are the frameworks on which we build that whole sizing exercise and provision Astra accordingly for you. So for any organization, it is not just scaling Cassandra, like you very rightly said, but everything surrounding Cassandra, when you need it, where you need it, in global scale, right? And the big leverage here, obviously, is the cloud, right? But if you mentioned DevOps, if you want to, you can really lean up your DevOps layer. But if you still want some level of DevOps control, we've got an API, a DevOps API with role-based access. Through that API, you can now create, terminate, resize, park your database as well. So it totally is up to you as a user, how much control you want, how much you want to play in the whole thing, and how much you want us to take care of your infrastructure, data infrastructure, so that you can focus on running endowers' business, which is the primary thing for you. So this is the value proposition, and all this is backed by the power of Cassandra that you so aptly and nicely mentioned earlier on. So thanks for that. High throughput, low latency, zero downtime, and a multimodal database, right? Multimodal database where you can have multiple data models. And while we are talking about this, of course, the TCO is a big angle, right? Because what Datastax has further done is for organizations like you who have write-heavy applications, right? We have significantly reduced the write costs also, so that the TCO gets even further accentuated, which is becoming very attractive to all the customers who use our stuff. So it's been fun. It's been fun doing it. It's been fun serving customers like yourselves and many others like you who are scaling their business rapidly with real-time applications. Jonathan, over to you.
Well, digesting the information, it's been a real education and very impressive how quickly you've built built the capabilities at endowers, and also the alignment with the business. So this session is being recorded. I think we've come to the formal end of the session. Any questions could be put into the chat. I'd also sort of direct people to the partner village for more information on Datastax. If there's any other resources you gentlemen would like to put out there, please type them in the chat. I could attempt to summarize this, but really it's covered everything. It's covered from the business use case, data at rest, data in motion, real-time data, integration, compute, and futures, right? So it's really been quite amazing how you guys have figured all this out in a short space of time to build the customer base, and also to meet the compliance standards, right? This is quite incredible. So thanks very much for sharing this. And with that, I'll formally close the session. And like I say, anyone who wants to put any questions or anything in the chat, or catch up with the gentleman on the partner village, especially Datastax. Okay, thank you very much, and have a good day.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Thanks, Deepak. Thanks, Deb.
Jonathan.